Welcome, friends, to Tanks Up, the podcast all about video games and beer. I'm one of your hosts, Ben. It's episode 425. It's been a couple of weeks. I had to think about it. I'm here with Lucy.
I'm back.
Hey,
I'm here.
hooray. And Aadil.
Hi.
Hey!
You're looking quite trim, actually, dude. The beard.
It's just because...
I mean, you must have... I think you've...
if I'm honest, I woke up late, had to go to a meeting, didn't shower. My hair back.
Bloody hell. It's the beard as well. You've had a bit of a trim.
This is a few weeks ago. So the thing is, when the hair is down, you have no idea how much I've trimmed the beard, which has been kind of terrible for me because I've been really lackadaisical about it. And then now that I'm like, last time I went to like a meeting or whatever at work with my hair pulled back, you're like, oh, that looks really good. I'm like, right, this is a look I can do. But also that means I have to tame this part of beard, right? Because everyone only sees this part. So basically, I just need to like make that look presentable and then kind of like do some evening out. And I don't even do that well. And people think, well-kept individual. Well, pull the hair back and like, oh, he's a mountain man in the northeast of England.
Nice. I had a shave earlier this week, but only in... the only reason was because I had to go to the dentist, and the last time I went to the dentist with a long beard, and they took a tooth out, they pulled where they're working, right? So I trimmed it down, and unfortunately I looked in the mirror earlier, having watched that.
So is the premise that the tooth and the beer length were related somehow?
No, unfortunately not. It's just when I had a tooth extracted previously, which is something I've got to have again, unfortunately, which is why I'm not drinking this evening, because I'm antibiotics for a fucking infection. But tooth's got to be extracted. Didn't happen, but our last time that happened, my beard was quite long, and where they're working with their gloves and stuff, it kept pulling all the hair, and it was really uncomfortable. And whilst stuff inside is numb, hair is not, and follicles are not numb to being pulled out constantly. So I trimmed it down, and then I looked in the mirror earlier, and I'm like, oh no, I've gone to Andrew Tate length. Oh dear. So I'm gonna. I don't know how to grow it quicker. I'm just gonna keep rubbing it. So if you see me sat here rubbing my face, not because my tooth hurts. Right. I'm trying to grow my beard quicker now. Just rubbing oils. And
I see.
But
all
yes,
that is a reasonable approach given the alternative of accidentally being presumed into a category that you definitely don't want to be in.
Absolutely, yes, completely. I've never been to Romania. I don't really want to for any illicit.
reasons.
I'd
love to go to Romania.
No, for illicit reasons. Yes.
Visit the sex trafficker.
Exactly. Good, but what a roundabout way of saying
I would
I'm
go
not
to the States,
drinking.
but there's like dudes like Matt Gaetz, the representative, who. Wait, sorry, I'm going.
So yes,
I deleted
drinking.
my Twitter today. I don't need to worry about politics.
Okay, fair. I will get around to that very shortly. But who is drinking this evening? Has anyone got a beer they're going to be having tonight? Aadil, what are you drinking?
I don't want a cold beer on a cold day. It's too cold.
I had a feeling this would happen where it's like, I've had a couple pints. So I had to work late because I'm heading to Dublin tomorrow afternoon so that I can be there because I've got a good friend from my time in Amsterdam. Sorry, it's just Nathaniel's a really good friend. We spent intensive master's time together. He was the year below, 2-year master's, but that was 2010 through 12. And like I just sort of like, oh, I've known this man a long time, but also I haven't seen him a lot of him for 10 years. So like actually I'm quite touched that like I'm one of the people doing a reading because
nice.
We're close. We just like it's that type of friendship where the premise is intense time and then when we get together it's fine, right? But like life. But
sure.
so I'm going for the wedding in Dublin, but that means I have to do all the like prep for next week's teaching because obviously I'm in Dublin. So Keith, my aforementioned, and by that I mean previous episodes, former housemate, lives in Dublin. I've got a couple other friends living in Dublin.
Nice.
I'm there for like barely 48 hours. I know I'm going to try and see all the people, and there's a wedding, right? So it's like I teach from 2 to 6 on Mondays. and then again at 9 on Wednesday. And I've realized that I have to do my prep for the Wednesday at the same time as the Monday because Tuesdays often just disappear on me. But mostly it's because like I don't have space after the Monday class to do anything, and like they might not look at things until after the Monday's class, but they need to see the thing, so it has to be ready after Monday because they have less than like they've got Tuesday, right? Because we end at 4:30 and then we start at 9. It's like Tuesday's your functional day. I'm not gonna teach from 2 to 6 and then
crack out
do stuff. Right, it's like, oh shit, I have to do all of that tomorrow because my weekend's gone, right? Anyway, so this is me whinging, but also I went to the Hop Knocker earlier, so I have nothing to complain about.
So you can fit a few beers in, ready to then just work and then chill for the weekend. Ooh, a Deya.
So I've got the Deya's We'll Take It Off the Zombies IPA. Is an IPA brewed with oats and wheat, Idaho 7 and Simcoe on the dry hop for equal parts tropical fruit and sweet pine. It is a carbon footprint of 0.9 kilograms per CO2e per liter. Actually, I don't know what that is.
No.
Is vegan. It's sorry. Weirdly, that's easier to see than the ABV is 6.5%. Barley, wheat, oats, and obviously Idaho 7 and Simcoe. Sorry, they've distributed the information really weirdly off the label. Basically, it's a zombie punching through it. Like I feel like it's zombie Kool-Aid Man is how I interpreted the label. What I really like about it is the fact that the zombie bursts through the brick wall and is holding a hop. And it's glowing. It just feels very... Probably because the only podcasts I've been listening to the past couple of weeks have been like idiot comedians doing live play D&D. So one Australian and one American one. And it's like, yes, the magic hop of like, it just feels right. Anyway, I'll crack this. Lucy, you don't have your pitcher of water, but you do have a bottle of water, but it is a hot water bottle, which I'm assuming you're not going to sample.
No.
Lime scaly.
Sorry, I just want to say, can you imagine being in a room with someone and they just pull the hot water bottle open, so like unscrew the top and take a swig? That would be so. I don't know how I would
like
deal
warm
with it.
cider. If it was like warm cider, yeah.
No, I just mean someone being like, "Yeah, I'm parched. I've got this hot water bottle. I'll just stuff it."
You know what? Times are hard. Water's expensive. Use it for your hot water bottle.
Depends how much it's cooled down, I suppose, doesn't it? Like burning your face off.
No, because so I've got a friend, Henry, who grew up very like, I think it'd be fun saying a poor Asian, as in like, his drink when he goes to friends' houses is hot water, a hot or lemon. Not tea, just hot water. And I could I'm thinking of like someone like Henry, where it's just like, well, if it's hot water, it doesn't matter what the vessel is, right? Like, functionally, this is to warm my body, but actually, it's just water in a thing. Except, of course, that I bet those hot water bottles just ruin the taste.
Interestingly, talking about odd drinks in odd vessels. I used to work in a working men's club years and years ago. And on a Friday and Saturday night, you always get the same clientele coming to a working men's club. That's where they drink. That's where they socialise with everybody. And there was one person who always used to come in, and he would have a pint of tea. And he would want it in a pint glass. And I don't know whether it's because he felt like the pint glass, linked him with everybody else, sat there with their pints and drinking and that sort of thing. So he felt sort of part of that same thing. But didn't drink. I don't know whether he just didn't drink or whether it was just a choice and he was working or shift, because it was a railwayman's club, so lots of people kind of coming on and off shift as well, sort of through the day. Just always drank a pint of tea in a glass. I hated serving it to him because the glass got really fucking hot.
Yeah, very hot. Yeah.
Anyway, there we go. Lovely little anecdotes for us. So, Lucy, you and I are not drinking this evening, so we'll just roll straight back around to you, Aadil, and what the day was like.
It looks like a hazy Deya.
Mm.
It poured with actually. What's interesting is I don't know if you watched the pour, but it was like really clean, low head, and then the like when you have to slightly angle, it built basically a finger and a half ahead. But within the first 20 seconds, that extra half left, so it's just got like a perfect finger of head. Even though it poured a bit more boisterously. Yeah, so I'm getting a bit of like tropical like mango, slight piney note undertone on the nose.
Nice.
But mostly it's just like this sort of sweet mango-y, like not overripe mango, but like tropical, bit of pine on the back end of the nose, and then maybe some like sweet citrus, but it might be just because I'm like thinking too much about the smell. Also, one of the last beers I had at the Hop Knocker was a very tangerine forward beer, so that might be where I was getting that.
Nice. And while you're sipping, CO2E, I think the E stands for emissions.
Yeah, so it's more about I don't. I don't know what the unit. So it's 0.9 kilograms CO2 emissions per liter. Gas is notoriously a thing that expands to fill a space. Is it the like? If it's the
science.
If it's the like, sure, it expands to fill a space, but it would weigh 0.9 kilograms. The fuck is the E doing?
So it's
so per liter of this thing,
Yep.
it has 0.9 kilograms of CO2. Oh, I guess I get it now. So it's like we emitted roughly this weight
of yes.
Right. And
yeah.
So I would just the E in the middle of the units is actually worse, I think, because if you just said I would read this as the carbon footprint, i.e. the emissions, are 0.9 kilograms per liter. That makes sense. Per liter this, I'm emitting, but like making the emitting within makes it very confusing. Anyway, probably for no one, because honestly what you end up doing is just looking at two things and saying, which one has the highest number?
Well, generally, it probably also just depends on where people are buying their energy from, right? Yes, some brewing equipment will be slightly more efficient in its energy use. Some brewing methods and different beers will probably be slightly more efficient or less efficient in their brewing and energy use. But it's kind of one of those where actually, dependent on where you're buying your energy from, is the biggest factor.
So this is the biggest problem I have with all these, which is, of course, you buy your energy from the grid. You don't buy energy from a windmill.
No.
So you buy energy from you buy energy from the grid through a company who contributes to the grid, and then they say, "Hey, 10% of my capacity is from windmills, so I will just like on my ledger say that you did this thing."
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to say you bought it from a windmill, but you didn't. And why I think it's problematic is because that's a lot of points of information failure, because this is just like kind of a bit guesswork, especially given that like prices fluctuate between things. So like, how much energy did this windmill give? So when you do the calculation, it's like, well, this windmill generated X kilowatts over this month. So then I calculate how much was the kilowatt price. Now that's not actually right. Like if it's not how it works, right? And you couldn't do a live conversion because you can't trace the kilowatts from the thing, the windmill, to the house. That's
you can. Certain methods allow you to actually trace.
Well, no, you can calculate the tandem this generated and this drew.
Mm-hmm.
But it's literally not possible to give this house or this building energy from this thing. You can just say, when this was generating capacity, this was using capacity. My point is,
I have a direct wire from the windmill.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you had a line from the windmill, that's great, right? Sure.
I mill my grain with my windmill, and that's it. So I know where my energy's coming.
So you know where your energy's coming from, and you know where your bread is being sort of
And my barley.
produced. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And then your beer.
I'm gonna
and
say,
your
if
bread.
you were milling your grain, then you're not generating power.
Yeah.
You're using that power to mill your grain. Anyway,
what
so
do I
sorry.
need?
I wasn't trying to like go into. So it's just
We
a
digress.
thing where it's so on my like research side, right? Yeah, like I look into like data center and the usage of the like what is the ethical footprint is what I call it of like AI. It's like, oh, data centers are a big part, and then Google and Amazon are like, oh, but we only use green power. I'm like, it's not a thing you can claim, but also, even if that were true, that means you're buying up all the green power so no one else can use it.
Yeah.
And if you're increasing your capacity or your like pull on the network, the energy network, then we're still in a bad place. This is just greenwashing. So I'm just like, anyway. The number is useful to compare between things, so it's fine.
And it needs to be.
It just doesn't mean it doesn't represent a clear fact.
Yeah, and this is where construction's starting to get to as well, because we're doing a lot of this in construction and the materials that we're using and those kinds of things. And construction is still in the midst of kind of getting to a point where everything is measured the same ultimately. So everything can be direct comparisons of, and they've got a methodology. There's a couple of different methodologies out there for this kind of measurement, some which are slightly more used than others, but nothing that is kind of universal across everything yet. And then some things are like cradle to grave, and then there's cradle to cradle, which is then the product doesn't have an end point. It's then recycled and put into something else. But then you need to factor in the use of the future thing, which might not exist yet, which it might be put into, and all of those processes. Incredibly complicated, incredibly just something that is not my job. That is the job. That is definitely someone else's job who has trained in those kinds of things. And I'm like, a client says to me, should I use this kind of insulation or should I use this kind of insulation? And I'm like, well, I can tell you up to a point what we can do.
But insulation's a very good example of like functionally, that's very measurable.
Yes.
Right, we know the difference between insulation A and B, and if you look at the environmental factors, you can say this is overkill, right, or whatever. It's the fact that like the way it's presented and interpreted, by like energy companies, etc., is like within this paradigm of like numbers that don't actually represent clear things. So like it's just like at some point you can just say this insulates more, and the hard question is, given the year to date or the average year, is that overkill or not? And then it's like, if I want the optimal installation, I will have an answer for my environment. And then the next question is, of course, it's like, what are the different costs? And then it gets all fucked, right?
Yep.
Because what everyone wants to do is like move things to a common like playing field, but like insulation recosts on the average British year when our weather is getting fucked. So we're having colder winters and hotter summers. I actually don't like you can't predict 5 years down the line, but your insulation is supposed to last 5 years.
Yep.
So actually, like you can't give the right type of number.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway,
the bit.
This has been.
Energy,
hot water tanked up.
Yeah. Energy, hot water bottles. Who knows? Final thoughts on the beer.
Brought the hot water bottle in front of the camera.
Literally, it's your fault. It's your
Lucy's
fault,
like,
Lucy.
all that happened was I
environmental
just
science,
lifted a hot water bottle instead of saying I'm not drinking, and it's been 25 minutes of bullshit. Yeah.
The funniest thing was is that this wasn't even for like heat. Well, that was a second-hand thingy. It was because I have like my sinuses get I have, is it sinusitis or whatever it is?
Sinusitis.
And and I had a headache because of it, and this was just like a warm compress.
Nice. Okay.
So it wasn't even for typical insulation. So that's the irony of it. This hot water bottle is well, I enjoyed that. It's nice to talk about something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's turned off.
I
but...
sure as fuck haven't played a game, but I can talk about units of measurement and how they lie to the people.
Sustainability efforts.
Brilliant.
It's something that they do like on every newsletter that they have. I think it's like at the bottom. It's like, this is how we're trying to be more sustainable. So it is relevant. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I mean, it's relevant to our day to day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we should invest in people, as Ben was talking about, who know these things and whose sole job is to know these things. And let's start teaching the next generation, because this generation obviously is just coal hungry.
Should die in a coal fire? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, well, I ain't got no kids and never gonna have kids, but even I'm like, maybe we should think about the future of this. You know? When I'm dead and gone, it may be nice if there's still a planet Earth, but you know what? Then I'm just like,
but you're dead. So
maybe we should just start over and just let the crocodiles and sharks do their things, and then just start over. The world doesn't need humans, really. Does it?
Never has, never will, because the world is not a thing that has needs.
Exactly. And so we talk about.
But we need sharks. They're cool.
Ecosystems, perhaps. The world needs ecosystems, but maybe the world does, but maybe the Earth doesn't. The Earth can be a floating ball of rock with no requirements whatsoever.
Told my students, like, what's the goal of human? So this was in ethics applied as a science. So this last week is when I did the lecture on the environment and data centers. And I was just like, really frankly, like, one, because people are like, oh well, because of the carbon crisis, we need to make sure, like, I think they said the Earth survives. I'm like, the Earth is a fucking hunk of rock hurtling through space. Very few things are going to make that not survive. What do you really mean? And it's like, oh, life, mostly humans. Human survival, that's the tenuous thing. And the problem is, on the way to humans still being able to survive, a bunch of other things don't. But like, that's actually what we're worried about. We're not worried about the planet's survival. That framing is bullshit. The planet, unless we launch all the nukes and they like hit in a certain spot, the rock covered in water will survive. And if we do it really badly, the covered in water part might not.
Well, that's all I'm focused on. Like, the cockroaches. Like, I don't care about humans. We should be wiped out. Like, come on, you know.
This is where the ethics part comes in.
Yeah, how did we gain intelligent life and still do the amount of nonsense that we do to one
because
another?
Intelligence is a low bar. We think we're magic because we have a notion of rationality, but we're still animals, so we have a lot of instinct, and self-preservation is built into that instinct.
Should we talk about some nonsense, magical, electronic?
Oh, sorry.
Things?
Are we not on my brand new philosophy podcast where I like whinge you about the things that connect our world state to the basis of my philosophical structures? Yeah. I didn't play any games.
No, that's fair. I
am going to Dublin on the weekend, and I'm taking the Steam Deck.
Okay.
Because I know that on the 1 hour flight and maybe the bus, I won't be able to do reading or marking or whatever. So I'm planning to
have a go.
Even though it's suboptimal, I'm going to play Capes on the Steam Deck, even though I feel like... So I've been avoiding it because I feel like it's ideally a mouse and keyboard game. And I've just not been in front of this computer when I'm not recording, and I realized, I just need to play it in some way, shape, or form. Mostly because weeks have gone by and I've forgotten that this is technically on my plate, and it has an impact on our website for not doing the thing. So just play the game.
Just have a go. First 5 minutes done. I can't remember whether it's an online game or whether it's a squad-based tactical XCOM like.
It's squad. From what I know, it's like, it's a tactical game, but you've got superheroes. But they're like, it's like the beginning to recruit into a team phase, right? So, and the whole point is, you are like figuring out how to do the thing with the various powers versus the usual like ranged attack melee guy, right? So his powers could like really mess with things. Seemed really cool. Again, no shade on the game. I've just not been playing games for months, and I thought at the time I could like do one, and I'm just not.
But you might get a chance on the plane.
Yeah.
Perhaps to take a look. Good.
And I've already established it's installed.
Nice. That's a start.
So I just need to turn on the thing and not worry about Wi-Fi.
Yeah, fair. Interestingly, I did. So I've been playing a little bit of the Steam Deck because I started up that Tron game that Bithell Games made, which the name of which escapes me. Tron Identity. There we go.
Was that like a? Oh, I'm sure you'll tell us. Is that like a narrative game? I can't even remember.
It is visual novel narrative-esque.
Yeah. Right.
And it's good. I'm enjoying it so far, but it's quite a slow experience. You're not kind of moving through anything. There's no sort of movement. Whilst the game that I previously played earlier this year, Minds Beneath Us, which was a narrative kind of game, that cyberpunk set sort of AI-driven type dystopian narrative kind of game. You're moving through the environments yourself quite a lot. With Tron Identity, it's like set camera angles. It's lots of text. You then click and say, I want to go here, and then the character will be there. And as you're clicking through text, you're moving through the environment instead. And it's setting up different sort of scenes. It's quite comic booky in that sort of way, that actually it's more like a comic book pane and a bunch of text. And you might get multiple sets of text kind of within that scene, but then it might change the angle slightly, and the conversation kind of continues. And there's a few things in the environment that you can kind of pick. But I haven't delved too deep into it yet. I've played just over an hour. And there is, so far, a sense of choice in some of the things that I'm doing. So I am a program which has been sent out to investigate something which has happened in the in the world of the programs, in the cyber world. And I have had choices where I can, on that investigation, take a character with me or ask them to not. And so different characters have different responses as to whether I had taken that character or I had not taken that character. So different things will open up, different paths will open up. So it... Go on, Lucy, sorry.
I was just going to say that it sounds like the Blade Runner point-and-click game.
So, I mean, very much. It's like it's going to be multi-path in terms of the options that you get, in terms of the decisions that are made. I don't know whether there are multiple endings. I would like to think there are. That kind of game where actually it's more of a choose-your-own-adventure type kind of thing. You have made this choice. Go to page 62.
Right.
Great, cool. I can do that. Rather than just it all being surface level. And you've made this decision, but actually in 3 scenes' time, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever, because you're still going to get to the same point, even though you've had that sense of choice kind of throughout. So I don't know how well that's established in Tron Identity. But the reason I started playing it was because I saw Bithell Games are making a new Tron game. Almost
really?
Yeah, like a Hades sort of like isometric action game. Which
got that license, don't they?
Yeah, they have, absolutely. They obviously potentially building on Volume, which they made years and years and years ago now. Which
I
was
that game.
It was really good. Not quite isometric. I think it was more almost top down, but maybe like 3/4 kind of down. Not on the angle, but maybe more sort of straight shot. But a little stealth game that they made, which is very good. Puzzle game. So interested to see what the new sort of Tron game they're putting together is like. So I thought I'd delve back into the world.
The John Wick game?
Yes, Hex. Yeah, I did play that as well.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking of the way you're describing the new one.
It sounds
like there might be
similar to that as well. But Hex, off the top of my head, having not played it for however long it was, I think was Hex like a movement, not movement it was movement based, but it was like tile based, I think, wasn't it? Like you got so many movements per turn. I think in
so
Hex.
it's like a proper Sherbrug.
Yeah, whereas the new Tron game is, or at least from what I've seen, looks much more free flow in terms of its action and its combat. It's not sort of turn based, at least
it's not an
from
SRPG.
what I've seen. Yes, it's from what I've seen in any kind of way. But yeah, I thought I'd delve back in. This is it's a slow burn, so it's quite nice to just sit on the Steam Deck downstairs when Kim's watching something on the telly, and I can just pull this out and play, which has been nice. But most of my time has been on a game called Songs of Silence, which I talked about a couple of months ago, maybe, when it was out in early access. It's had its full release now, and it's much of the same as what I've played. There's not not really a huge amount more to say about Songs of Silence. It is a turn-based game in.
Oh, it's this game, right?
Yeah, it's not quite a 4X. There's a little bit of resource management. There's a little bit of taking over cities and towns and using your armies to roam around the maps. But I've mostly been focusing on the single-player campaign, which follows a set of characters as they try and reclaim their home or find a new home, let's say, because their ancestral home was eaten by other dimensional monsters. And there's a lot of variety in enemy types. There's a lot of variety in unit types, and I am liking the kind of idea of a civilization like, of an endless legend like, but with that campaign element to it. That actually I'm not just sat on one map trying to dominate or do a cultural victory or whatever I'm trying to do to win that map. I've actually got a goal, and I'm trying to move through, again, a bit of a story through a specific scenario. But I am playing on what they call balanced difficulty. But it doesn't really feel very balanced. Only in that because of the 1.0, I had to restart that scenario when I went into it, when it updated. And it took me the first 30 turns to basically just battle off constant barrages of enemy armies trying to take down my city that I was garrisoned in, and they're just constantly besieging me. So I can't build up any resources, because you can add buildings and certain things to cities and settlements to help you build more resource. Gold, there's like stone for building new buildings and stuff, and a fervor, I think, is the other one. But it was really, really difficult to break out of that cycle of just two armies constantly battering me, to not be able to build stuff up. And I pushed through, and very, very slowly over those turns was like, great, I've got one turn, I'll buy a new unit, because I've made enough points from defeating the besieging armies. I'll buy a new unit. My other ones have healed up just enough that actually I can probably leave and go down to the next section, go down to the next little town, which is where they're all filtering through from. And I don't know whether it was just a point where the back end doesn't have the same resource management, or at least the scenario doesn't give the enemy the same resource management that I've got to deal with, because it was just a constant flow of armies until I hit a certain point. And then that slowed down. Then I hit another point and it slowed down that little bit more. So whether it was more I was just stuck in a certain point in a scenario, but it got a little bit boring. I'm like, I will push through, but they're just battering me constantly. This is not fun. Yeah,
I was just like, so from what I apparently clicked, I pushed a button on my keyboard, and now GeForce overlay is turned on, so covering my face on the Discord call is FPS and render latency and all kinds of stuff. It just threw me off. Luckily, I don't need to look at my own face. Yeah, so from what I've read about this game, the the twist on the 4X is that it's an auto battler sort of knit into the 4X, so you don't have to. It's like somewhere in between a 4X and an RTS, but it automates the like extra RTS stuff. Is from what I understand.
Yeah,
like in the sense of, like it auto battles, so you don't have to do the thing, but you can. But you're not doing the full on like StarCraft manic twitch clicking.
Absolutely, absolutely. You form the armies, so you get to choose what units are in what army. You've got a hero per army as well, and what they surround themselves. But each of the heroes have abilities. So you have cards that you drag and drop that have cooldowns. Yeah, of course it can't. So you drag and drop them onto the battlefield, and a card might be give this unit protection, or make this unit explode on death, which will damage the enemy. A bunch of different things for the different characters that are in this as well. That's the only active thing you're doing during those battles. Otherwise, there is an AI for certain units, and they basically just bash against each other in whatever configuration you set up.
So it's not like you can like choose to like. I like the idea of on some battles it's like very straightforward. I'll let the AI do the thing, but there's no way you can be like, now I want to drive.
Nope.
Combat.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope. Ultimately you configure your army. You set them up, and then you send them to a new city to besiege it and try and fight that army, or an army that is roving around the countryside.
So there's something about that I like, because like the big thing, especially in so the big problem with like Civ and being able to like direct all the things, like that's not how battle works.
Yep.
You entrust your people to do the thing. You cannot do direct like communication. I use this as an example in teaching because there's this dumb. So in game theory, there's the two generals problems, where this idea of like I've got two generals and two halves of the army on the top of a valley, on the left and the right, like two parts of a valley, and we want to attack guys in the middle. And one general says, "We're going to attack at dawn." And then they send their perfect ninja operative who has to go through the town, but doesn't get detected, and tells the second group, and then they're like, "Yep, cool. I will definitely attack at dawn." And then the ninja dude guy has to go back and to the first guy and be like, "They're cool with it." And then this is literally a problem of like when we model the signaling game, at no point are both sides sure that the other side is going to do it, because they don't know if the other person has gotten the communication.
Sure.
Right, because when the dude, the communicating dude, is leaving 2 and going to 1, the only way to get confirmation that he talked to 1 is when he comes back to 2, but then 1 doesn't know if he's made it there, because he's traveling through and it's like it's dumb because that's just not how like the world works, but it is a problem of like when we model communication, this is a problem. But that's actually, so what I realized was that's actually one of my problems with games like Civ, is kind of like you are omnipresent order wise, but you aren't omnipresent physically in these games, right? It's like a weird disconnect where these things exist and they're the only things that can make like impact in the world, but I get to dictate them. And like if I'm in the world of like pre-writing, actually something like an auto battler makes more sense, where it's just like, I trust you, go and do things.
Yes.
Because I can't tell you anything, because comms is really slow, but also like functionally, I cannot send you a message saying, please focus your attack run on these guys because they pissed me off, because I don't have the written word.
Well, and also in the heat of battle, yes, okay, you might have set up your configuration, and this unit is going to fight the unit in front of them. But once they've defeated the unit in front of them, what the fuck do they do then?
Yeah.
And there's only half of them left.
You should be able to
Shit,
direct them, right?
Exactly. What are we going to do now? Bollocks. Let's just run over there and help our friends. Or let's just go to the next closest unit. Rather than, it's not like, great, we are swordsmen and we defeat spearmen very easily. So we will go and find the closest spearman unit to defeat, which, if you're playing a strategy game, you would try and optimize and kind of do.
Yeah,
even if they've got to move around all of the other units to do. Rather than just going, oh, here's the next one. Charge at them, which is what this game does, and it's what this game does quite well. The battling system does work out in that kind of slightly more, I say, realistic kind of way.
Like a manic melee, for lack of a better term.
Very manic.
But like, so what you could, so there's like, if you, I think like, there's a really neat idea of a game of like, we now have the ability to give patterns to troops, right? And that seems reasonable, right? So it's like, oh, can you go because like if I was Nero or whatever, that's a bad example because he was famous for his problems being at home. If I'm some like ruler, right? I could say like, go explore hesitantly or aggressively, and it's like, yes. So I could even tell them like, you'll probably do well against spearmen, but not horsemen. Sure. But, like, I have to give those orders, and then they have to go away. And then they just have this, like, imprint of, this is what we think, and they have to interpret, like, I'm in this situation. These were the orders. What do I do? Which is functionally actually super interesting. Like, now I'm super pumped for the idea of a 4X game where this sort of wrinkle is everywhere, right? Because then what you do is you spend all your time being like, okay, so from what I know, I'm gonna try and have a war with this person and hopefully make peace with this person. So I'm gonna tell these guys before they leave, hey, if things go wrong with these guys, just like fade away. But these guys fucking kill them. And you know what happens? In our negotiations, things go the opposite way, and my guys are just gonna do the wrong thing. But that's like actually more like realism, and that's a thing with quote unquote modern AI in games we could actually model, and that's actually a really more interesting thing. So I don't like the micromanaging. I like the exploration, but actually this is the wrinkle I think that I would love, right? Which is the like, I'm in the Stone Age, or I'm in the Bronze Age, or I'm in even like whatever. Like comms channels are really tough, and like if you had some RNG that said like, and then the communication still doesn't happen because that happened a bunch, right? Like the historically accurate notion of the information flows makes the initial orders way more impactful, and that's super interesting. But you need the units to be able to actually like interpret and reinterpret when they get the new orders. But we have that technology.
Yeah.
What you don't want is like an auto battler that just sort of randomly auto battles, or a 4X game that like lets you have all the power but also needs you to do all the things. And when I say you, I'm saying I don't find that fun. I know people do. I'm not trying to yuck your yum. I'm just saying like that. Sorry, this conversation has like triggered a whole interesting thought process of, oh, this is kind of why Civ games just don't do the past right, because you have this perfect information and ordering.
It's too easy to game, almost.
Well, that's actually why people like it, because you can do the gaming. But like, there isn't much of a difference for ordering your units in the computing age and the pre-writing age, because you are ordering your units with this like godlike perspective. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone talk about that.
No,
sorry,
probably not.
I will stop talking.
People have probably talked about it internally.
Like spinning.
Devs and people like that have probably had lots of these conversations kind of internally.
The problem is like, I suppose, unless the units could fend for themselves to a certain degree, this is a non-starter, right? You need someone to tell them what to do. But actually, we might be at a point where rudimentary. Again, if you wanted to model like the we sent like a quarter of our army to sort of scout, but also maybe take over. What are they doing? They're gonna like just do a thing. We can make units replicate that. Now, we couldn't do that in Civ 2 time, right? And that's actually a thing I've never thought about, which is like, oh, it's like crude information like flagging is actually exactly what you want in these like early times of this something like Civ, which is like centuries long.
Yes.
Because you can't follow up.
You don't have the information.
You just have to say the thing. Yeah. Right. And then actually, it'd be super interesting to see how people's playstyles change on a game like this fictional game I'm thinking of, right? Where it's like, oh, I have to be really specific on this one touch with these guys because I might not be able to tell them anything for 17 turns.
And also, it would get really interesting in terms of actually, and Songs of Silence has this where you have like named generals per army, right? All with different voice acting. Sean Bean's appeared, I think, in the campaign for one of the characters.
So in what chapter does he die?
Yeah, that'll be a couple of chapters off from where I am, but they all have their own, personalities, characteristics, and that kind of thing. But actually, in terms of what you're talking about, that who you put in charge of your army becomes incredibly important then, and it's much more a person, or at least a unit kind of resource management sort of game, where you go, great, I'm creating this army, but I've put this person in charge, and we're telling them before they leave camp to, defeat the army very efficiently if they can, but keep as many, civilian casualties low as possible. But I've put this fucking ridiculous berserker in charge of this army, who I've got no idea actually what they're going to do when they get there. And there is that AI element of them having a, whether it's a bit of RNG in whether they do X or Y when they get to that kind of thing, and how big that web becomes of the decisions that they can make when they get there. There's a little bit of autonomy, but you've had the choice of who to put in there before they get to that point. So there could be an absolutely ridiculous auto-battler type game that pulls all of this kind of thing in that could just go fucking all over the shop, because that is exactly what the game is trying to portray. The fact that shit can just go south at any given point, ultimately. And there's all of these decision points when these armies are moving across the land with your orders, but whether they then follow them up, what happens, whether other armies come in with all of their own decision points and all that sort of stuff. This incredibly complex web. That's not Songs of Silence. But as I said, I'm enjoying Songs of Silence enough to want to give it more of a shot than the scenario that I've been playing recently has portrayed to me. So I have started, and it has a skirmish mode, so it does have just that, here is one map mode, fight against a bunch of other armies, and there is victory conditions and things like that. So I have started one of those, and I'm going to play as one of the armies that I'm not in the enemy army of the campaign. I'm going to play as them just to see what different play styles and things are like, to see if it gives me something a bit different before going back to the campaign. So I will kick on with it a little bit, but we'll see how much it holds me. That's it for me this week, or for the last couple of weeks actually. So we haven't met for a few weeks. So I imagine Lucy's going to barrage us with 3 weeks worth of games.
Yeah, I've been catching up on a few things. I played the Rise of Golden.
Yes, Rise.
Oh shit!
Rise of the Golden.
I have to buy that right now because I totally. You said it once in like our chat. I'm like, oh, I need to pick that up. Fucking time blindness and busy term. It's been like 2 weeks probably since
I've got it downloaded. It's a Netflix game. I've got it downloaded on my phone through Netflix.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh wait, are you saying I don't have to?
Yeah, you might not have to pay for it. You might want to pay for it if you enjoy it and you want to give the devs some money, but you can play it through Netflix as well.
I don't know how it works on, like, I guess iPhone or Android or whatever, because I don't think you can play Netflix games on PC, I imagine.
No, I don't know.
Funny story. You could up to a point because at one point Windows 11 had the Android, what's the word? Emulating stuff on there.
Right. Okay.
And then weirdly, when the Surface,
Is that all you're gonna eat?
64 Surfaces came out, because you would think that the ARM processor would be easier to emulate the Android, but for whatever reason, at the same time we finally got like a stable Windows 11 on ARM, they took the Android emulation out of the default Windows package. So yes, if you haven't updated Windows 14 to 10 months ago, but haven't updated since.
Yeah. I dare say anyone playing on Netflix probably not going to jump through those hoops anyway.
But I will look this up.
I have just gone onto Netflix on their website to see if I can play it, but there's no games through the browser at all.
Yeah.
No, you have to do it off of the Android store. You have to look up Netflix. Golden? Is that?
I think Golden is on. I think the first game, Curse or the Case.
Case and Rise. Rise is the new one, right?
Yeah.
I'm installing Rise as we speak.
I downloaded it on Steam Deck because I bought it on Steam, but for me it's a mouse game, so I just played it on my laptop. It's not really much to say other than it's more of the same. But I think it's just refines the experience a bit more. And this one's set in the 70s, whereas that one was set in like
18.
Gosh, it was probably or maybe even before.
So I think it ends at 18 something, but it starts at like 15 something.
1500s or something like that. Yeah. So this is like it's a difference, it's a different setting. This is more like just the 70s, whereas that one spans centuries.
Yeah. So have you finished it?
Yeah.
Okay. So how does it feel being? Because I think one of the interesting things about the full game of Case of Golden Idol was that it kind of like stretched across essentially at least one century, if not more, right? Like it was like this big epic story that you like checked in with, right? And so that gave it this sense of, especially the later levels where you like find out the like sequestered society and etc. Right? Like you're on this weird island, you're like, oh shit, right? They've been here for a while and they've been dealing with this fucking idol and stuff, right? Like that gave it a sense of presence, for lack of a term. So is given that it's just in 10 years, do you feel like that has changed the like feeling of scope?
Yes and no, because, and I'll explain a bit more. Because you don't have to play the first game to enjoy this one. But it is very much like, okay, this is a relic of yore, and it has got that like kind of what have we uncovered here kind of mystery to it. If you played the first game, you know some of the capabilities of it, of the idol. But in the second game, it doesn't detract from your experience if you know, like, okay, this is like some cursed thing. But it having the context, it's like, oh, okay, you already know that this thing is like, probably not going to do well in the wrong hands.
Right.
So it's more having that kind of like foreshadowing and like undertone of knowing that, okay, this idol, it's got powers and that can potentially be misused in the wrong hands. So you've got that. And in terms of the scope, the really, I think, really clever and ingenious thing that this game does is like the first game, like literally like almost every case there was like a murder of some kind. Whereas this game, each like vignette, I think there's 5 chapters in all. Which I think about four chapters in each. Sorry, 4 like vignettes in each chapter.
Mhm.
Like these can be like, yes, there are murders in some of them, but these can be like wildly different, like vignettes, and everything's told out of sequence. So you're like trying to understand the timeline, and it's like, how does this prison escape relate to this auction, which relates to this hippie commune? It's like they're all so drastically different. And that's the thing in this one where it's like at the end of each chapter, you're given like because in each vignette you're having to place the nouns and the verbs and figure out write the story and figure out what happened in that vignette in that scenario. But then at the end of the chapter you have this overarching story where it's like, oh, I have to piece together what happened across these 4 different vignettes and get like the timeline in that. So it gives more of a sense of scale in that sense. And it is
I see what
like,
you're saying, yeah.
yeah, so it is like, oh, even though it's just told within a decade and in the 70s, the amount of different threads that are happening and different how this all these factions and parties and interests come together around this idol. It's really, that's the blown out scale in this game, which I think they've done really well. And that's just how they've refined the experience. And another way that they've refined it is that there are so many like subtle hidden clues in the environment that I feel like the first game sometimes things were like, ooh, I didn't see that. That's like a bit hard to interpret. How would I have noticed that or seen that? Maybe that's sometimes that came down to the art style as well, which is a bit more detailed in this one, whereas that one was like kind of like, we were talking about VGA before we started the call, like that kind of like graphics. Whereas this one, it's like it's a bit crisper. It still has like kind of ugly and kind of weird look, and like some of the characters are just like very much caricatures and like Punch and Judy-esque kind of thing. But I think this one, it hides a lot of information in the in the environments and like attention to detail, and it's like, oh, that's why that's there, that's why that's there, it's a clue. And it's like I never once needed a hint or to look anything up on this one.
Nice.
And it's like and it was fun piecing it all together. And yeah, the story's excellent, and just what they've how they brought all these different threads together, because these are like very different vignettes that you just like, I don't understand how this relates to this, but then everything just comes together so nicely that it's better than the first game, which is what you want.
I mean,
I mean,
that's
there's
exactly
no
what I was
doubt.
hoping to hear. Was
Yeah.
like, because mostly like because I feel like like I said before, right? The scope of the timeline really did a lot for that first game, and so for you to say, oh, they figured out how to not only like do that, but actually beat that without that scope, that's great. Storytelling, like, boy, if you have like decades, really you get to do. It's a flexibility thing, and so if they figured out how to tell a tighter story, and then presumably the gameplay's tighter because you aren't crossing multiple decades, etc. That
but it is just
I'm
like,
now at a
you're
conundrum
thinking, how
where
do
I
these
have it
things
downloading
come
on my
together?
phone, but I might just buy it because I want to play it on my computer.
Yeah, I find the interface was just easier to use on like a bigger screen, because in this one it's like you've got like the same panels that come up for the interface, and where you like drag and drop the words and nouns and proper names and stuff like that. But and there is just like an easy button that you can press. I'm pretty sure that's probably across all devices where it was spacebar on Steam, where it's like, okay, that gets rid of all the UI and you're just back on the vignette and the
Right.
image. But there is a lot of like, oh, I have to go, look across to this room or look across to that room, and it's like have to compare. It's not always just, oh, I have to figure out what happened in the story. A lot of it is like, okay, where was this character in this place? What, what, where? Okay, in every scenario, no, maybe not every scenario, but in most scenarios, you have to figure out who the people are and then the story. But
Yep.
there are like other things, like it's like, okay, whose prison cell was this, and you have to like put faces onto like, okay, the different prison cells and stuff like that as an example. So there's like multiple different things that you have to cross-reference. So it's just easier for me. Well, I found that it's just like use a mouse and toggle
That makes sense
between
to
those
me.
two. Yeah. But I'm sure it's fine on iOS or the
Oh
Android.
yeah, Yeah, I think the key there is like it's a quality of life thing, not like a
Yeah.
playability thing. Like
No.
you can play this game multiple ways, but like
Yeah. But I
quality
was
of
getting
life
really
wise,
frustrated on
navigating will
Steam
be
Deck.
just a bit tighter
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, because it is just like a Steam Deck game, but I was getting quite frustrated within like the 5 minutes of just like using the trackpad
Yeah,
and
I was
doing
just
it.
saying. So
Yeah.
from what I remember, right, like not only was the like zipping to a plot spot to like because I've figured it out, but also sometimes it's like just like using the keyboard and mouse together to do the thing.
Yeah.
It's just what the game is designed to do, and you can do it in other methods, but they're never going to be as tight and crisp.
No,
Which
no,
is fine,
but
right? Like
yeah, but it's just but it'll just be a slight annoyance probably, but still very easily manageable. You probably just enjoy figuring out the puzzle so much where it's not going to hinder you too much. I just found it quite annoying, and it's like, why struggle through this when I have when I can just get it on my laptop? Whereas if you're playing it for quote unquote free on Netflix, you'll probably just be like, yeah, I'll put up with it, whatever. I'm getting it for ostensibly free.
Yeah,
So,
I think I'll try
yeah.
it. I think I'll try it next week or over the weekend at some point, perhaps, and let everyone kind of let you know what it's like on the old touch screen.
Yeah, I think if you've got like a tablet or something like that, that might be a bit better. But rather than just a tiny little phone. But
yeah,
yeah,
so I mean,
that's Rise of the Golden Idol.
Nice.
What were you gonna say, Aadil?
I was just saying, so my because I bought one of the new Surfaces because I cracked the screen of my Surface 8 or whatever the fuck it was. And this is why I mentioned that like I was supremely frustrated that they like took the Android support out when I had the Android Ideal processor, because like a bunch of Windows stuff isn't optimized for ARM64. Have the ARM64 chip, battery life is great. Not everything runs on it, so then it has to emulate. Emulation's okay, but like, oh, but you have this Android thing, and it's like, oh, that shouldn't be emulating. That should be like 1-to-1, right? Like, or at least something. And they cut that support, which means like now it's probably 2 layers emulation instead of 0, because my chip has to emulate the like Intel X64, which is then going to emulate the Android thing. But actually, I've got a much closer to Android chipset, so it should just be able to run this type of basic ass game, but it might not be able to because it's like going through like software hoops that are arbitrary.
Yeah. It's well, there's always. I think Xbox have just been like, you can stream any game you want now to any thingy platform you have, but I still think then you probably need a controller for things, and it's just like, just want everything to work how you want, whichever input method you want, and it's just like, one day we'll get there.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Can we talk about another input method
Yeah.
in the keyboard, in the typing?
Ah, yes.
Oh, I feel like I should know what you're referencing, and I don't.
No.
Now I'm curious.
Well, with me, when I say like a typing game, it could be literally anything. Cause,
Oh yeah, well, it's definitely going to be a game where you actually have to type. But like,
yeah.
I'm probably out of the loop on what the set of those games are.
Yeah. Well, I like to try them all. In this circumstance, it's touch type tail, which I believe has been on the Epic Games Store for a while.
Right.
But it's just come to Steam recently. It's from I think Pumpernickel Studio. I think, are they German? I can't remember. But anyway, it is. This is why I was very interested in the previous conversation about is it Songs of Silence?
Yep.
Because this is a typing game mixed with a real-time strategy game. It's set in like medieval times, and basically it's got like the sort of top-down view that you'd imagine like most RTSs. The thing is that you're not using your mouse to, control where enemies and like build settlements and stuff like that. It's everything's done via typing, which is a lot because I mean, right out the gate, the game like throws a lot at you, which a lot of strategy games do, and that's fine because it's like, okay, it's kind of like, even though it throws a lot at you in terms of like tutorialization and instruction, it's like essentially it's just typing. So like, random words will pop up, and it's like, okay, to do this, I got to type this random word, etc., etc. What's not so great is the fact that it's throwing a lot at you as gameplay, as it's like, okay, in order to get raw materials to build up these towns and these settlements and these different buildings, it's like, okay, I have to go into the mine, so I have to type something to go into the mine, and then when I'm in the mine, I have to get make sure the cart is press a type a key so that the cart is like moving, and then I have to write all these other letters as like this gold ore is popping up, and it's like I have to type all those letters, and then it's like, okay, now I have to go into like the barracks and type another random letter, and then word, sorry, because it's not always like I want to go to the barracks, type barracks.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like random words,
right?
Like just cycling all the time. And the fun things about RTSs is like when we were talking about min-maxing things and find the most efficient ways of doing things, and using hotkeys and hot swapping to like all these different places. This doesn't do that, or I've played probably about an hour and a half. It's like it doesn't do that yet, at least. So it's like I'm having to go here and see what random word has popped up for this area. Then I have to type it, and then I have to go into it, and I have to start recruiting all these people. And it's like, oh, the minecart has run out of juice. Now I have to go back there and enter back into this, and it's like it's too much.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And the game starts off by saying, like, we recommend you challenging yourself. And, the default difficulty is hard. So it's like, oh, okay, I go hard. It's like, I'm decent at typing. I'm probably average. Well like, I think it calculates like 92% accuracy or something like that. That's average, probably. And it's like, I'm decent at touch typing, whatever. It's not like I'm learning to. But and it was like, yeah, I have decent accuracy and decent, words per minute, but it's the amount of stuff that you're having to do.
Right.
And it's like it just melts your brain having to be like, okay, but now I have to go do this and do that. It's like looking around the map. It's like, okay, how many soldiers have I got? How many arrowmen have I got? How many enemies are attacking this base? And it's like it's so much to do when you are having to add another layer of like not just clicking around, where you're having to type and like type random letters, and it's
that makes sense. That's
I'll try. Yeah,
a different skill set, or like
it's
just like a
two
fundamentally different vector. You're like, I can do this, but I'm trying to use my brain for this, and these aren't connected. Fuck.
Yes. And I'll drop it down to easy because it's like level by level. Like in each level, you're like, okay, can you deliver this to each of the towns? Can you go to these different like towers and like the fires? Can you survive long enough against this barrage of enemies? So there's different types of like levels, rather than just like, okay, just survive, I guess. But it's a lot. It's a lot. That's all I can say. It's a lot to manage, and you're having to literally micromanage like all these different things. And so far, there's no way of like just being like, okay, let me just make a hotkey or something like this, or like have this building always. I always have to type this word to get into this building, rather than it just being on a random loop. Because then it's like, I think it defeats part of the touch typing thing, where it's like, oh, I'm having to keep looking. Well, not touch typing. It's sort of like the RTS thing, where it's like I have to keep looking over to this building and seeing what word I need to enter to get into that. It'd be nice if it was like, okay, this is like kind of automatic in my brain. I know to type, I don't know, vault if I need to go into like the bank or something like that. It's like, so it's just a lot. It's a lot. It's like,
I think with something like this and with Songs of Silence as well, both have demos on Steam. Really important with these kinds of games to have that bit of a flavour. As we've talked about for years, how important demos actually are, and how they seem to be becoming a little bit more prevalent or back on the scene a little bit. To see, as you said, Lucy, it says challenge yourself. You started this and you've dropped it down and may still continue to do so. Someone goes into this demo and goes, off the back of what you've said, great, I'm going to start at medium, then potentially drop down as well. At least they get the experience rather than going into it and going, cool, I'll start on hard, hitting hard and going, fuck, and then just not playing it again, kind of thing. So yeah, worth having that demo to be able to play about a little bit.
Yeah. The thing is, the unfortunate thing is that I don't think it's just about what the difficulty setting is. I just feel that maybe it's my brain is just not equipped to handle this. It's just like, seems like it's too much, and it seems like this would really benefit from just being pared back by getting rid of like 2 layers of mechanics.
Right.
And just having it as like a fun typing game that's also an RTS, but that hasn't got the complexity of an RTS layered with being, having that additional layer of having another game in it. I think there could be a really good way to blend both genres of game and have them both just meld together really well. Whereas this feels like 2 disparate games just added on top of each other, and then just adding the difficulty of both of them on top of each other.
Okay.
It's just like I'm not. Where it's just like, look, my horsemen are just getting slaughtered now because yeah, it's just like I couldn't type this word fast enough, or to send them over here and send them over there, and whilst I'm looking at this over here and making sure that I've got enough resources and materials. It's just, yeah, it broke my brain. But I like what it's doing. I think it's nice to see more typing games these days. And it's like, if they came out with like, a more stripped down mode, or like a sequel that's like, that's a bit more pared back, I'd be really interested in it. Because yeah, I like different versions of typing games. Like there was it last year or earlier this year? Where it was like a typing game that's like a bullet hell shooter.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
A few of those knocking about, but it's like, yes. I mean, you could just give me a new typing of the Dead game every year and I'd be happy. But it's nice to see, different devs play around with, different genres of typing games. And I think an RTS with a typing game would be very good. Like Critmaster, that's like kind of an RPG. It's real time, like kind of combat. So yeah. I enjoyed that. So.
Nice.
Yeah, there's something here.
Good. Your audio has dropped down a little bit, Lucy. I don't know if you've something has changed slightly. It's.
Oh dear.
Oh, there we go. That's louder.
I think my lead came out. Oh dear.
Then default to a different mic, maybe.
Yes. Oh no. Audacity stopped.
Yeah, of course it did, because the lead went out. So the source, yeah.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh
well. Well, we've got the first bit of my episode.
Well, it's fine. We've got the slightly lesser quality audio from that tiny little bit then as well that we can manipulate.
I'm so sorry for creating more work for you two.
It's alright.
It's not me this time, unless Ben needs me to. But also this weekend I'm in Dublin, so I won't be able to.
No,
I'm gonna get a sellotape and stick this wire into this.
Whilst you're off the PC on this kind of makeshift, temporary-ish sort of setup. Yeah.
Can get some duct tape. Yeah.
Nice.
Is that tape for ducks or tapes of ducks? Is it like audio tape of quacks?
Just lots of quacks.
Just tape a bunch of ducks together.
Do we want to finish there this week after talking about those games? Does anyone have anything else they want to cover this week at all? Good. Everyone jumps at once.
Can you hear? Sorry, I can't tell if you can hear Dorian yelling, because he's yelling a storm.
A touch.
But like, this has happened before, and Discord's like, "Nope, we're cutting this." And then I was on a call with my Canadian financial advisor yesterday night, and this same thing happened, and he was like, "What is going on? Is there a child dying in your place?" I'm like, "No, it's a senile cat who probably just pooped."
Discord cuts it out when you're not talking, but when you're talking, he's coming through very loud.
Yeah. Hi. He put his head in the door. Come in.
Lucy, did you have any other games at all?
That was the best part is, because of the way we record, who knows what it will sound like to the podcast
very much.
listener. They will either have a pitch perfect Dorian for like 7 minutes, or be like, they're just talking about a thing that's not happening.
Yep.
And yes, we aren't going to try and master it around this particular talking point. No one has time for that.
Absolutely not.
If you want us to have time for that, we will establish a Patreon where you pay us for
it. We could do. Let us know.
And you can find us on Blue Sky.
Yes, we'll get to that shortly, I think. But yeah, any other points this week at all from anyone?
No,
lots of points.
I played that Death of the Reprobate, which is just like that Joe Richardson. He does all those weird point-and-click adventure games that are basically ripping Renaissance art and just putting it into like a Monty Python-esque game.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Can we talk to that guy?
It's funny.
We've spoken about his.
Yeah, he's been
previous...
on the show. He gave us codes for
No.
the old ones, and then we didn't talk about them again.
No.
Isn't that right?
No, I think it's a different guy.
Different guy? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've talked about the game.
We have to.
One of the games.
Yes.
Yeah. All of his games are great. Go buy them. They're hilarious.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Good.
That's it.
Perfect.
My closing.
I did one thing I was just going to mention as we started talking about handhelds or the Steam Deck. PlayStation Portal has now activated. I don't know whether this is something they had to work on the code for the actual system, but you can now stream directly to the PlayStation Portal if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber, rather than having to stream.
Before?
No, you had to stream it through the PS5.
Oh, I see. So it now talks to the servers directly.
So it's talking to the servers directly rather than it talking to your
good.
machine.
Oh, that's actually super interesting. Because that means something in the PlayStation Network is running the program.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
which is what the
so
PlayStation 5 does when
it's
it's streaming games. So the PlayStation
so
5
now
can stream
it's
games.
much more like the NVIDIA NVIDIA, what was it called?
Pass.
Why I say what was it called is because they've literally, NVIDIA has just cut support on that in the past month.
Oh.
And PlayStation has added that type of support to the thing they didn't have. That's a super interesting swap. That's why I wanted to highlight
So
this.
you would need to be a PlayStation Plus subscriber to have access to streaming games. But
GeForce Now. GeForce Now is not a thing.
Yes.
They killed it.
Did they?
Yeah.
What did they? Oh, I didn't realize they'd killed it. I thought that was still going.
I thought that was still kicking. Yeah.
We will talk about this next week, maybe. Because
Yes,
I know
absolutely.
You're trying to wrap up.
Let's do a little bit of research and find out. Maybe we can talk about handhelds next week. Not that I'll have a PlayStation Portal, but I have kind of gone. I wonder if there's a Black Friday sale for a PlayStation Portal potentially. I might come under like 150 quid or something.
I think it's a big problem is the PlayStation doesn't have an app, right? So like if you could, so why I say this because if you have a PC, you could then stream to the thing, but also if there was an app, your Steam Deck could then play the PlayStation games, and that's the one connection we don't have right now.
So there is an app on Android for remote play. But again, that's doing the same thing. That's tying back into the PlayStation. So I'm connecting to the PS5, which is exactly the same as the
Steam Deck
Portal
would have to run the Android emulator to.
Yep.
That's where it all falls apart, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the PlayStation, because I don't think, again, they had a dedicated app on PC. I think it was the same. Well, they did have an app on PC, but it was, again, talking to the PS5 rather than streaming natively.
Which is why the PlayStation remote controller, whatever they called it, was very crazy, because it was like you just have a very neat form factor for a remote play that's local to your LAN.
Yes.
That's not worth $200.
Does someone else want the telly the PlayStation is connected to? Now you have another screen to be able to play your PlayStation still. Great. You can do that on your phone. You can do that on your PC. You can do that in a number of different ways.
That's good.
Perfect. But now it makes it a much more tantalizing purchase that I don't even need the PlayStation on.
Yeah.
Perfect. I can just stream whatever games I'm thinking of playing. So, yeah. Good.
Or just play your Steam Deck.
Or just play Steam Deck. Absolutely. Yeah. I've got fucking tons of games
the
there.
thing that I do now. Yeah.
Let's finish then, Aadil, on the Deya.
It's a great beer.
Good.
No, Ben, I said great. I mean, I'm not surprised. I will say that I think the oats, like we've talked about how oats have been just flooding the market because they're cheaper, and like the past couple of years have been rough. I think the oats have like on the initial taste have helped temper some of there's a bit of a citrus spike, but that's like kind of rolled off because the overall taste is kind of not mediocre, but like middle in the sense of like the oats and everything are like pulling it down, which is great because then you have this like hit of citrus, but you don't have that like you get the best of both worlds, where it's like, oh, it's like an unripe citrus, but you don't get that hit of tartness that would like offset the taste because the oats are helping round it out. But then as soon as that like transaction, if you will, happens, then the oats are kind of just dulling everything else. To a point where I'm like, I've had enough Deyas in my Deyas, that I just suspect that the oats and wheat are balanced for one part of the taste curve on the tropicalness, which is like what they were highlighting. But the other part, it's not. And like, I know why, sort of macroeconomically or whatever, that's the case. My only complaint is I feel like the finish is kind of dull and boring given the tastes that were introduced in the start. And I know that like oats just stick around. So whatever, like if you're happy with them dulling the foretaste, they will dull the aftertaste. And if you aren't doing a thing to compensate, you just get a boring finish. I feel like that's exactly what this beer is, which is like it's really tasty. And if you're drinking it like reasonably, like if I was in a pub and just like supping it over a half hour, I wouldn't have noticed this, right?
Okay. Yeah,
because I'm just drinking it because like then I'm getting that foretaste that's really good and the right balance at a pace. But as soon as I leave it for like 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, the reason why I haven't picked it up is because the last taste was like quite flat. And I know this is like the problem of oats, but if I was at the brew pub or whatever and it was like slightly like heartier on draft, it wouldn't have been a thing. Or if I was just drinking a bit quicker, because it's just, if you give it that slight extra time, you might not pick it up again, just because it's quite a weird taste curve where it's not like flat at the end, but relatively it's just quite boring, just because it just nothing's happening to the same extent as the start. Again, this is all in the context of Deya makes great beers. This is a good beer. It's just not well balanced on either side, where the oats are actually making that balance worse, I think. So like the former part of the taste curve is better because of the oats, but the latter part of the taste curve is worse because of the oats.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And so if you are drinking it at a pace, this is not a problem because like the finish, etc., needs time to feel worse. And if you're drinking it fast enough, it won't. So overall, like there's not a huge complaint.
Fair.
Just don't nurse this beer.
Okay.
You'll be fine.
Okay. Good.
Just smash it back.
Yeah. Nice. Good.
That's literally what Dorian's been saying. Drink faster.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, come and hang out with me, drink it, finish it.
Yeah.
Good. Well, that's this episode for this week. Thank you for joining us. You can get us on the socials, including Blue Sky, slightly less on Twitter, but we are, what are we now? Out of Lives Net, as we were on Twitter. We are on Blue Sky. We haven't transferred over a tanked up profile. I don't know whether I will. We're using it less and less over the last year, few months, those kinds of things. But at least if you want to keep up with Out of Lives, all the other articles, our episodes when they go up, that will now go across to Blue Sky. I am also at Nova_47 on Twitter for maybe another day or two, and then I'll be Nova47 on Blue Sky because they don't let you do underscores over there.
Oh, really?
No, they don't. Aadil is
at the Omnarch, everything but Twitter because I've just nuked my account.
and Lucy is
Juicy Loose 9, still on Twitter, retweeting indie devs most of the time, and nothing else. Because
crosswords.
As soon as I go on there, oh yes, my crosswords. I don't know if you can find me at Juicy Loose 9 on YouTube anymore.
Okay.
I've rebranded.
Ooh.
I'm now Lucy Verbalist, like Crucy Verbalist.
Okay.
But I think probably you could put in Juicy Loose 9 and it'll still come up. But yeah. I'll probably, well, I'm not on Twitter anyway. If you sent me a DM, I'd probably get in the year 2037. But
when it's all burnt down.
the whole, it's all burnt down by then anyway. I'm not just talking about Twitter. I'm talking about the universe.
Yeah, the
so,
internet as a whole, everything.
Elon Musk will nuke space. He will destroy galaxies, so it won't matter.
So, yeah. Speaking of nukes, no, go to outoflives.net as well if you want to see the beers that we drink and see our faces whilst we are recording, or catch us on Twitch on the Out of Lives Twitch channel. Yeah, I think that is everywhere we exist these days. They're the games that we've been playing, the beer that Aadil at least has been drinking this evening. Thank you for joining us this week. We've been Tanked Up, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
www.outoflives.net